The stars had always been quiet, at least to the people of Earth. For centuries, humans had looked up at the night sky, dreaming of exploring the cosmos. But they had no idea that beyond their reach, the universe was watching them, and it was about to change forever. It all started on a normal day in 2450. The sun was setting over Earth, casting long shadows over the cities. People were going about their business, unaware that the fate of their world was about to be decided. High above, in the farthest reaches of space, the Galactic Council was making its move. The Galactic Council was a powerful alliance of ancient species, ruling over countless star systems. It was an organization built on control and fear, demanding tribute from the weaker civilizations under its rule. For centuries, it had been the law of the galaxy, an unspoken truth. No one dared to question the Council's authority. But now, Earth was different. Humanity had risen faster than anyone had expected. They had explored the stars, colonized distant planets, and developed technology that seemed beyond the reach of any other species. However, even with all their advancements, Earth was still far from a match for the mighty Galactic Council, or so the Council thought. Suddenly, a strange broadcast interrupted every television and radio station on Earth. A deep, commanding voice echoed across every screen and speaker. "Attention, inhabitants of Earth," it began. "This is the Galactic Council speaking. For centuries, your world has remained in the shadows of the galaxy. We have watched your growth with interest. Now, it is time for you to pay tribute." The message sent a chill down the spine of every human who heard it. Tribute. It was always the same. A demand for resources, technology, or lives. Earth had never been forced to comply with the Galactic Council's orders, but now, the time had come. The Council's words were clear: bow to us, or face the consequences. A heavy silence fell over the planet as the message ended. People froze. Governments scrambled. The entire world was paralyzed with fear. Earth had never been put in this position before. What could they do? The Council was too powerful, too vast. They had fleets of ships, technology that seemed almost magical. Earth was just one small planet. What could they possibly do to resist? In the heart of the United Nations Command Center, world leaders gathered. The room was tense. They knew they had to act quickly. But what was the right move? Some argued that Earth should comply, offer the tribute, and avoid conflict. After all, the Council could destroy them with ease, but others were not so sure. They remembered their history, how humans had fought back against impossible odds, how they had overcome tyrants and invaders. The debate raged on. Outside, the world's citizens were in panic, unsure of what to do. It felt as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Then, a calm voice broke through the chaos. "We can't give in. We are humanity. We don't bow to anyone. We fight." The voice belonged to Commander Eileen Stark, one of the most respected military leaders on Earth. She had led the first successful interstellar defense mission years ago, and her name was known across the galaxy. She stood before the world's leaders, unwavering in her resolve. "There's more to us than the Council realizes. I've seen our potential. We don't need to back down." Her words were a spark in the darkness. The room fell silent, as if every leader were considering what she had said. The idea of resistance was dangerous, but it wasn't impossible. Could humanity truly stand up to the Galactic Council? Could they face an enemy so much more powerful than anything they had ever encountered? "Do we have the power to fight?" one leader asked, his voice shaking. Commander Stark nodded. "We don't just have the power to fight. We have the power to win." The room fell into another moment of silence. Every person knew the weight of what was being said. If they rejected the Council's demand, they would be declaring war. It would mean bloodshed. It would mean losing everything they had built. But Commander Stark's confidence was contagious. The fear that gripped the leaders began to fade, replaced by a sense of determination. They had fought before, and they could fight again. Humanity had always been resilient. It was their defining trait. "We will not surrender," said President Holt, the leader of Earth. "Prepare the fleet. We are not sending tribute. We are sending a message." The decision was made. Back in space, the Galactic Council's ambassador, a tall, imposing figure named Loreth, stood before a group of his fellow leaders. Their spaceship hovered above the Earth, its massive form casting a shadow over the planet below. They had expected quick compliance and easy tribute from a primitive world, but instead, they had been met with defiance. "This is unexpected," Loreth muttered, his sharp eyes scanning the communication data. "They're preparing for war." His fellow council members exchanged worried glances. This was not supposed to happen. Earth was a young, developing species. How could they challenge the might of the Galactic Council? Loreth clenched his fists. "Prepare the fleet. It seems the humans want a fight. We will give them one." As the Council began mobilizing its forces, the universe held its breath. Humanity had just taken the first step into a battle that would define their place in the galaxy. No one knew what would happen next. Would humanity succeed in standing up to the mighty Galactic Council, or would they be crushed under its overwhelming power? The stage was set, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The decision had been made. Earth was now standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss. The leaders had chosen their path, and it was one filled with danger. There was no turning back now. As President Holt's words echoed through the UN's command center, the whole world knew the gravity of what had been decided. "Prepare the fleet. We are not sending tribute. We are sending a message." The message was clear. Earth would not bow to anyone. But what did it mean? A battle was coming. A battle that would not only define the fate of Earth, but perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy. As the leaders began organizing the defense, Commander Eileen Stark was already mobilizing the forces. The interstellar fleet, though still young and largely untested, was humanity's greatest weapon. It was no longer just a group of ships in orbit. It was the symbol of Earth's resolve, the embodiment of defiance against the mighty Galactic Council. Stark stood in front of the operations table, her eyes focused on the holographic map of the solar system. The fleet was being assembled, but there was something troubling about the Council's movements. Their ships, massive and nearly unstoppable, were positioning themselves above Earth. They were preparing for a strike. "We don't have much time," Stark said, her voice steady. She turned to her officers. "We need to move fast. I want the fleet ready to launch within the next 3 hours. Every ship, every pilot. They'll be expecting a simple surrender. They won't see us coming." Her officers nodded. There was no time for hesitation. Humanity was about to face the biggest challenge it had ever known. But Commander Stark had no doubts about the power of the fleet. Earth's ships were equipped with advanced technology that was far beyond the Council's understanding. A new kind of energy weapon had been developed, a weapon that could match the power of the Council's ships. It was still in its testing phase, but Stark was confident that it could change the course of the war. If it worked, the balance of power could shift in Earth's favor. If it failed, they would be doomed. Stark paced back and forth, deep in thought. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. The entire planet's survival rested on the decisions made in the next few hours. Meanwhile, the rest of the world had their eyes glued to their screens. News outlets broadcast the events, the tense silence before the storm. People gathered in their homes, some in fear, some in defiance. Many prayed for victory. Others feared for their families. The world was united in one thing: uncertainty. On the streets, soldiers and civilians alike were preparing. The government had issued an emergency mobilization order. Everyone was on alert. The streets buzzed with activity as humanity took its first real steps into the unknown. It was as if the entire world had collectively held its breath. Back in space, the Galactic Council's ships were waiting. They had expected Earth to bow, to submit to their demands. But now, with each passing moment, the tension grew. The Council's ships moved into position, their massive hulls dwarfing the few human ships in orbit. Loreth, the Galactic Council's ambassador, was seething with frustration. He had never expected Earth to challenge them. The humans were so young, so naive. They had no idea what they were up against. "Are the fleets ready?" he asked, his voice cold with authority. "They are, Commander," one of his officers replied, his tone respectful yet tense. "We are prepared to crush them." Loreth nodded slowly. "Very well. We shall show them the cost of defiance." But even as the Council prepared to strike, there was a sense of unease. There was something about Earth's determination that they didn't fully understand. The humans had been underestimated. They hadn't been given enough credit. The Council's arrogance had clouded their judgment. And now, it was too late to turn back. On Earth, Stark's fleet had taken to the stars. They were leaving Earth's orbit, the massive warships gliding through space with purpose. Humanity was no longer just a small planet with dreams. They were now a force to be reckoned with. The ships were silent as they traveled, but inside, the tension was palpable. Every crew member knew the significance of this moment. If they failed, Earth would fall. There was no second chance, but the determination in their hearts burned brighter than the fear. Commander Stark stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out into the void of space. It was a quiet moment, a brief pause before the storm. But inside, her heart raced. The mission ahead was clear: to face the overwhelming might of the Galactic Council, and to win or die trying. As the ships moved into their final positions, Stark spoke to her crew, her voice filled with certainty. "This is our fight. We have the strength, we have the will, and we will not back down." The words echoed in the minds of everyone on board. Humanity had never faced anything like this before, but they were ready. For the first time, they were going to take the fight to the galaxy. Far above, the Galactic Council's ships loomed, ready for the inevitable clash. The question was no longer whether Earth would surrender. The question was, could the humans actually win? And the galaxy, once indifferent, would soon have its answer. The moment of truth had arrived. The Earth fleet was moving swiftly toward the Galactic Council's ships, and the countdown had begun. On the flagship, Commander Eileen Stark stood, her eyes locked onto the holographic map. Her fingers gripped the edge of the command table as she studied the approaching fleet. There was no going back now. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the engines and the soft peeps of the control systems. The crew was ready, their faces grim yet determined. They were a diverse mix of soldiers, engineers, and scientists, united by one common cause: survival. Stark glanced over at her second-in-command, Lieutenant Ramirez, who had been with her through countless missions. "Are we in position?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, Commander," Ramirez replied, his voice steady. "We're within range of their defenses. Our weapons are fully charged and ready." Stark took a deep breath. She turned to the large window, watching as the stars streaked by. They were moments away from making history. Earth's entire future was riding on this battle. If they failed, humanity would be crushed beneath the weight of the Council's power. But if they succeeded, they would prove that they were not to be underestimated. "Helm, engage the fleet," Stark ordered. The command was simple, but it carried the weight of the galaxy. The Earth ships surged forward, cutting through space with terrifying speed. The Galactic Council's vessels loomed in the distance, their massive forms dwarfed by the fleet of humanity. Despite their size, the Earth ships were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with weapons the Council had never anticipated. The first strike came suddenly. A bright flash of light erupted from one of the Earth ships, and the first of the Council's defensive shields was obliterated. The blast sent shockwaves through space, reverberating across the fleet. The Council's ships, which had been confident in their invincibility, now found themselves under fire. "Direct hit," Ramirez said, his voice tinged with awe. "We've breached their shield." Stark's eyes narrowed. She could see the ripple of confusion moving through the enemy fleet. The Council had not expected this. Their ships were still formidable, but humanity's strike had done something they couldn't have predicted. It had shaken them. "We're in, Commander," one of the officers shouted. "The enemy is scrambling to respond." But the Council wasn't done yet. A massive ship at the center of the enemy formation fired back, launching a series of powerful energy blasts toward the Earth fleet. The impact was immediate, and several Earth ships were struck by the attacks. Sparks flew inside the ships, and the screens flickered with red alerts. Stark's heart skipped a beat as the damage reports came in. It was a reminder of just how high the stakes were. The Council's weapons were devastating, but humanity wasn't backing down. "We're holding steady," Ramirez said, his voice unwavering. "Return fire, Commander." Stark didn't hesitate. "Yes. Give them everything we've got. We didn't come this far to lose." The Earth fleet unleashed a second volley, this time aiming directly for the Council's vulnerable points. The weapons on the Earth ships pulsed with an intense blue light, the energy weapons firing faster and with more precision than ever before. The Council ships began to stagger as more and more strikes hit their hulls. "We've got them on the ropes," Ramirez shouted, as another blast hit the Council flagship. The force was enough to cause the ship to shudder, sending debris flying into space. "It's working, Commander." But just as the tide seemed to be turning, the Council unleashed a counterattack unlike anything humanity had faced. A massive energy beam, a weapon of unimaginable power, fired from the heart of their fleet. It was aimed directly at the flagship, the heart of Earth's assault. Stark watched in horror as the beam grew larger, its destructive force becoming evident. The lights on the ship flickered, and the crew braced themselves. The beam slammed into the Earth flagship's shields, pushing them to their limits. The entire ship rocked as the energy coursed through the shield, causing an explosion of light and sound. "Shields at 20%, a crew member shouted. "We can't take another hit like that." Stark gritted her teeth, her hands clenched into fists. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing in on her, but she refused to let fear take over. This was the moment. The moment Earth would either prove its worth or fall into the hands of the Galactic Council. "Hold on," Stark barked. "Give me everything we've got. We're not backing down." With a deep breath, she activated a command that had been kept secret for years. It was a last-ditch weapon, one that Earth had developed in case of an all-out war. It was dangerous, untested, and if it failed, it would take out everything in its path. But Stark had no other choice. "Initiating counterstrike," Ramirez said, his fingers flying across the console. The weapon, a concentrated burst of energy, fired from the flagship's core, arcing across the battlefield like a spear of light. It shot through the space between the fleets, hitting the Council's central ship dead center. The explosion was blinding, engulfing everything in its wake. The shockwave sent ships spinning and destabilized the Council's formation. Their flagship was now crippled. "We've done it," Ramirez said in disbelief. "We've crippled their flagship." Stark allowed herself a moment of relief, but she knew the battle wasn't over. The Council had many ships left, and they would not go down without a fight. "We've made our mark," she said quietly. "But the war is just beginning." The Earth fleet had made a bold move, one that would shake the galaxy. Humanity had struck the first blow. But now, the galaxy would watch closely. Would Earth stand firm, or would they be crushed under the weight of the galactic might? And above all, Stark knew one thing. Humanity had made its presence known. The galaxy would never forget the name of Earth. The first battle had ended, but the war was far from over. As the Earth fleet circled the remains of the shattered enemy ships, Commander Stark stood in the middle of the command bridge, her face set in grim determination. She had won the first victory, but she knew that the Council would not let this defeat slide. They would come back with everything they had. "Report," Stark barked, her voice calm yet sharp. She needed to know how bad the damage was before making any decisions. Shields are down to 40%, Commander. Several of our ships took heavy fire, Ramirez reported from the tactical console. But we've inflicted significant damage to their flagship. They're retreating. For now. Stark nodded, but her mind was already racing. The Council wouldn't retreat for long. Their empire was vast, and their pride even larger. The battle had bought them some time, but she couldn't afford to relax. Not for a second. They needed to capitalize on this moment. Set course for the outer rim, she ordered. We need to regroup, gather more intel, and prepare for the next phase. If the Council is going to retaliate, we need to be ready. The crew immediately began working, adjusting course, checking the ship's status, and sending out long-range probes to gather more data. Stark moved over to the navigation panel, looking over the map of the galaxy. The Council's forces were spread out, but they would regroup, and once they did, they would have the full might of their military machine at their disposal. She turned back to Ramirez. Lieutenant, have all the fleets report in. I want a full account of the damage. Aye, Commander, Ramirez replied, his fingers flying over the controls. A few seconds later, a series of holographic reports appeared in front of Stark. Some ships were missing entirely, their destruction unknown. Others were heavily damaged, with entire sections of the fleet incapacitated. It was bad, but not as bad as it could have been. Humanity had withstood the initial onslaught, and the Council's flagship had been crippled. That alone was a major blow to their morale. But Stark knew better than to get complacent. The Galactic Council didn't just wield power, they commanded entire worlds. They were ancient, powerful, and ruthless. They wouldn't take kindly to being embarrassed. The outer rim is still secure, one of the officers reported. But the Council will be rebuilding their forces. They'll have reinforcements coming in soon. Stark knew that the next few days were crucial. They couldn't afford to sit back and wait. Earth needed to hit the Council again while they were vulnerable, before they had time to regroup. Prepare the warships for another offensive, she commanded. We'll strike when the Council is weakest. The galaxy needs to know we're not just going to lie down and be conquered. The crew worked quickly, knowing that the next phase of their fight would be even harder. Stark stepped away from the command center, her mind already racing with battle plans. She wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. She was fighting for every world that had ever been oppressed by the Council's rule. This battle had become personal. In the command center of the Galactic Council flagship, the mood was tense. The Council's leaders had been in an emergency session for hours, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Their forces had been crippled, their pride wounded, and their supremacy threatened. Admiral Varan stood at the head of the Council, his eyes glowing with fury. That human warship is the cause of our humiliation. It's impossible. We thought their technology was primitive. How could they have inflicted this much damage? The others around the table were silent, shocked, and angry. None of them had expected Earth to put up a fight, let alone destroy one of their flagship vessels. The humans were supposed to be nothing more than ants beneath their boot. Viran turned to the holographic display, where images of the human fleet flickered. We have underestimated them. They've shown us their strength, and now we must return the favor. His voice was cold, calculated, and laced with venom. It's time to remind these humans just how insignificant they truly are. The Council's leaders nodded in agreement. They had done this countless times before, conquered planets, destroyed civilizations, and imposed their will. Earth would not be any different. Prepare the fleet for a full-scale retaliation, Varan ordered. No more hesitation. We will crush them. And this time, we will show them the full power of the Galactic Council. Back on Earth's flagship, Stark was pacing, her mind a whirl of strategy and preparation. She had expected the Council to retaliate, but now she was certain they would come for them with everything they had. They would not let the humans escape this humiliation. The war had only just begun. Commander, Ramirez called out, snapping Stark from her thoughts. We've received a message from Earth Command. They've authorized an alliance with the Outer Rim colonies. They're ready to help us fight back. Stark stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. The Outer Rim colonies, their allies in this fight, were mostly independent systems with their own agendas. But their joining the war meant that Earth now had the backing of other star systems, each with their own fleets and resources. "We'll need all the help we can get," Stark muttered. "Get ready. The Council is coming for us, and when they do, we'll be ready." The message from Earth Command was a small victory, but it gave Stark a renewed sense of purpose. The people of Earth and their allies were ready to stand together and face the might of the Council. But the real test was yet to come. The Council's counterattack was on the horizon. Humanity had struck the first blow, but now they would face the full fury of an empire that had conquered and destroyed countless worlds. And Stark knew that no matter how strong their resolve, the next battle would test them all. The Earth fleet was not the same as it had been only a few days ago. Commander Stark stood in the middle of the command bridge, looking out at the vast emptiness of space. Her mind was focused, calculating, and determined. She knew the Council would soon be coming, but she wasn't about to back down. "We have reports from the Outer Rim colonies," Lieutenant Ramirez said, walking up to her side. "They're reinforcing their positions. The fleet's numbers are growing." Stark didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gazed at the star map on the console in front of her. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and the Council was about to make its next move. But humanity had done the unthinkable. It had thrown the first punch, and it had landed a significant blow. Now, the question was, could they follow through and win? Her thoughts were interrupted as a series of red blips appeared on the radar. She quickly moved to the center of the command bridge. "Report," she demanded. "Fleet approaching, Commander," one of the officers called out. "It's the Council. They're coming in full force." A cold shiver ran down Stark's spine. The time had come. Humanity's gamble, its defiance, would be put to the test. She had no doubt that the Council was bringing everything they had. Their pride, their technology, and their weapons of mass destruction. They wouldn't let humanity's insults slide. "Get the fleet into position," Stark ordered, her voice firm. "And get the Outer Rim ships ready for battle. We're going to show the Council what it means to face humanity." The Council fleet was massive, a shining armada of advanced warships, their metallic surfaces gleaming in the void of space. It was a sight that would have struck fear into any lesser race, but not humanity. No, humanity had something more precious than any weapon or technology. It had the will to survive, the will to fight. Stark stood tall as the ships moved into formation, the hum of the engines vibrating beneath her feet. The countdown to battle was ticking in her mind. Every second mattered. On the command console, the tactical map showed the enemy closing in. Stark turned to Ramirez. "They've got the numbers, but we've got the will. Prepare all warships. This ends today." Just as Stark spoke those words, the first volley of enemy fire struck the fleet. Explosions erupted in space, ships rocked with the force of the blasts, and debris was sent flying in every direction. Humanity's fleet wasn't ready for the overwhelming firepower of the Council, but they weren't backing down either. "Brace for impact," Stark ordered, gripping the console tightly. The ship lurched violently as the blast hit, but she didn't flinch. This was what they had been training for. The battle had begun. Far above, within the Council flagship, Admiral Viran watched with a mixture of pride and impatience as his fleet tore into the human ships. "We'll crush them," he muttered to himself. "They have no place in this galaxy." "Admiral, we've received word from the rest of the fleet," a communications officer said. "The humans have activated a defensive shield. It's absorbing our firepower." Viran's eyes narrowed. "Increase firepower. We'll break through their defenses. We will not let these insignificant creatures defy us." His hand shot up, signaling to his commanders. "Bring the full might of the fleet to bear. Let's make sure this is the last battle they fight." Back on Earth's flagship, Stark could feel the pressure mounting. The enemy was relentless, their weapons tearing through their shields, but humanity wasn't giving up. In the midst of the chaos, Stark's voice rang out, cutting through the noise. Counterattack. All ships initiate offensive maneuvers. The Earth fleet surged forward, firing on the Council ships with everything they had. The battle was chaotic. Explosions, flashes of light, and the deafening sound of laser fire echoing across space. Humanity's ships fought with everything they had, refusing to surrender, refusing to bend. "We can't hold them off much longer, Commander," Ramirez shouted, looking at the damage reports. "We're losing ships at an alarming rate." Stark's jaw tightened. There was no turning back now. They couldn't afford to lose this battle. Earth's survival depended on it. "Push forward," Stark shouted with fierce determination. "This is our home, our future. We will not let them destroy everything we've built." In that moment, humanity fought not just for survival, but for pride, for their place in the universe. Meanwhile, back on the Council flagship, Admiral Viran was seething with anger. His fleet was beginning to take hits. It was unexpected. No one had predicted that the humans would hold their ground this long. But the Council had not seen the full scope of humanity's power. "What's happening?" Viran demanded. "We're being hit harder than anticipated, Admiral," his chief strategist replied. "It seems the humans are more resilient than we thought." "They will break," Viran said through gritted teeth. "They have no choice." But the Admiral was beginning to doubt his own words. The humans weren't breaking. They were pushing back. And with every passing moment, the tide of the battle seemed to shift. Stark stood in the heart of the command center, watching as her ships held the line. Her pulse was racing, but there was a fire in her chest that kept her going. She could see the enemy starting to retreat, their once proud ships now battered and burned. The Earth fleet had done the impossible. They had survived. The Council was faltering, but the battle wasn't over. Not yet. The enemy would regroup, and there would be more battles to fight. Stark knew that. But for now, humanity had taken the first step in proving that they would never be slaves to anyone, not even the Council. The tides had turned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battlefield was chaos. Humanity's fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they fought like a cornered animal with nothing left to lose. The Council's ships, their weapons far superior in technology, continued to rain fire upon the Earth fleet, but there was something about humanity's defiance that was not easily extinguished. They refused to buckle under the pressure. The longer the battle stretched on, the more the Council realized they were facing something they had never encountered before, a race with an unyielding spirit. Commander Stark stood firm at her post, her hands gripping the control panel as the ship jolted under another impact. The atmosphere on the command deck was tense, filled with the sound of alarms and the constant hum of machines struggling to keep up with the damage. But despite the mounting odds, Stark's resolve only hardened. "Report," Stark barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields are at 50%, Commander," Lieutenant Ramirez replied. "We're taking heavy damage, but the enemy is starting to pull back. They're repositioning." Stark's eyes narrowed as she looked at the tactical display. The Council fleet was clearly regrouping, trying to adjust their strategy. It wasn't surprising. They had the resources, the manpower, the experience, and the firepower. But what they didn't have, what they could never have, was humanity's will to survive. "Stay focused," Stark ordered, a calmness settling over her words. "We've made them back off, but this fight isn't over. They'll be back with everything they have. We need to be ready for the next wave." Up on the Council flagship, Admiral Viran's face twisted in frustration as he watched the unfolding battle. His fleet had delivered blow after blow to the humans, but their resistance was beginning to fray his patience. The humans should have been wiped out by now, their fleets reduced to dust. But instead, they were holding their ground, adapting, surviving. "What's happening?" Viran demanded from his command station, slamming his fist onto the console. His dark, alien eyes scanned the various reports flashing in front of him. "Admiral, The human fleet is more resilient than anticipated, his strategist said, concern creeping into his voice. They're using unconventional tactics, repositioning their ships in ways we didn't predict. Their coordination is impressive. Varan's fury grew. The humans were making a mockery of his superior fleet. They had taken the Council's full assault and somehow managed to push back. He couldn't let this continue. Bring the heavy artillery to the front lines, he snapped. I want everything we have thrown at them. This ends now. The fleet began to shift, massive warships repositioning to take advantage of their advanced weapons. Yet, despite all the firepower and might, something gnawed at Varan. He had underestimated humanity. He hadn't taken their determination into account, and now it was biting back harder than he'd ever expected. Back on Earth's flagship, Stark was prepared. She had been in the military for decades, and she knew that when your enemy regroups, it's often the perfect opportunity to strike back. It was time for humanity's counterattack. All ships, prepare for a full assault, Stark ordered, her voice sharp. I want their reinforcements scattered. Hit their weaker points, then hit them again. The officers around her were quick to react. The Earth fleet, battered and bruised, but alive, began to move into position. The warships of Earth had faced the worst, and now they had a chance to turn the tables. The Council thought they were still in control, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The first salvo of Earth's counterattack lit up the blackness of space. Blinding flashes as Earth's warships fired their main cannons, their missiles shooting toward the Council fleet with deadly precision. The enemy ships, struggling to maintain their formation, took hit after hit. The tide of the battle shifted, slowly but unmistakably. Stark could feel the pressure mount as her ships closed in on the Council. This was the moment she had been waiting for. They had given humanity no choice but to fight for their survival, and humanity had done exactly that. But now, humanity was pushing back with everything it had. Fire again, Stark shouted. Don't give them a moment to recover. Admiral Varan watched as the Earth fleet's retaliation ripped into his ships. The sound of explosions echoed through the flagship as his ships rocked under the barrage. His face twisted in disbelief. They're actually pushing back, Varan muttered under his breath. No one does this. No one survives against the full might of the Council. His chief strategist leaned forward, his voice low. Admiral, the humans are showing tactics we haven't seen before. Their ships are more mobile than we anticipated. We may need to reconsider our approach. Varan growled, clearly frustrated. I don't care what tactics they're using, he snapped. We will destroy them. Pull in all reinforcements. It's time to end this farce. But even as Varan issued his orders, there was a seed of doubt growing in the back of his mind. The Council had never faced an enemy like humanity before, an enemy that refused to submit, that fought with everything they had, and never gave up. As the battle raged on, Stark's gaze never left the tactical display. The tide had shifted in humanity's favor, but she knew better than to get comfortable. The Council was far from finished, and they still had unimaginable resources at their disposal. Keep your focus, people, she reminded her crew, her voice hard as steel. We're not done yet. This isn't just about winning. It's about making sure the Council understands that humanity will not fall to their demands. Not now, not ever. The Earth fleet surged forward, unrelenting. Despite the damage, despite the losses, humanity was finally showing the galaxy what they were capable of, what they had always been capable of. And the galaxy would never forget. The clash between the two fleets continued, the explosions lighting up the dark vacuum of space. As humanity's warships retaliated, it became clear that the Council's grip on the galaxy was loosening. One by one, their ships began to falter. The once proud Council fleet was being torn apart, and the humans were showing no signs of stopping. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most powerful empire was staring at the possibility of defeat, and it was humanity that had dealt the blow. The battle had reached its climax. Space was filled with the roar of engines and the crackling of explosions as Earth's warships tore through the once immense Galactic Council fleet. The air was thick with anticipation, the final moments of this galactic conflict hanging in the balance. On Earth's flagship, Commander Stark stood at the front of the command center, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. Every moment, another Council ship fell, a testament to humanity's resilience. The strategy had been simple, but it had worked. Humanity had outwitted a far superior enemy. And now, the Council was on the verge of collapse. "We have them," Lieutenant Ramirez said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "The Council fleet is disintegrating. We've broken their lines." Stark didn't respond immediately. Her mind was focused, calculating the risks even as she allowed herself a fleeting moment of victory. The job was far from over. The remaining Council ships were desperate, fighting tooth and nail, but their forces were scattered, their coordination falling apart. "Prepare for final assault," Stark ordered. "We finish this now." She knew the Council was not finished yet. They had one more card to play. Their flagship. It was the last of their formidable warships, heavily shielded, and armed with weapons capable of decimating an entire fleet. It had remained at the center of the battle, its firepower holding the human fleet at bay, but it was now exposed and vulnerable. The Council flagship was Varan's last hope. If it fell, it would be a signal to the entire galaxy that the Council's reign was over, but if it held out just a little longer, the tide might turn in their favor. On board the Council flagship, Admiral Varan stood before the massive view-screen, watching as his fleet crumbled. His ships were in chaos, and every command he issued seemed futile. His forces had been outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and worst of all, outsmarted by humanity. He clenched his fists, staring at the approaching Earth fleet. The humans had become an unstoppable force, and now there was nothing he could do but try to survive. "Admiral, the flagship is still holding," his officer reported. "But we are running low on power. The remaining ships are too damaged to continue fighting." Varan turned, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. "We are the Galactic Council. We will not be defeated by a primitive species." He slammed his hand on the command console. "Order the fleet to make a final stand. All ships converge on the human flagship. We may die, but we will take them with us." Stark's eyes narrowed as the Council flagship moved toward them, the remaining Council fleet attempting to shield it from incoming fire. She knew what was coming, a final desperate assault meant to bring everything down with them. "Brace for impact," Stark ordered, her voice calm but filled with determination. The human fleet surged forward, targeting the flagship's vulnerable points. The warships moved in coordinated precision, firing relentlessly. Stark's mind was sharp, calculating every move. It was no longer just a battle of firepower. It was about endurance. Humanity had to prove that they were the true masters of their fate. "Focus fire on their engines," Stark commanded. "If we disable their propulsion, they won't be able to escape. This ends here." The Earth warships unleashed their final volley of missiles, the explosive force lighting up space. The Council flagship's shields flickered, struggling to hold up against the assault. With each hit, its defenses weakened, and finally, the inevitable happened. The flagship's engines exploded, sending a shockwave through space. The flagship was crippled. Varan watched as his last hope evaporated before his eyes. The flagship, his pride and joy, was losing power, its once impenetrable defenses shredded by the human assault. He had lost. His empire, his fleet, and his very existence were now at the mercy of the humans. "This can't be." "No." His voice trailed off as he realized the truth. There was no escape. His forces were broken, and the human fleet had won. The reign of the Galactic Council had come to a bitter end. With the Council flagship disabled and its remaining fleet scattered, the battle was over. Humanity had done the impossible. Against all odds, They had brought down the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Commander Stark stood at the front of the command center, her heart pounding in her chest. The display showed the last of the Council warships surrendering. The Earth fleet had secured victory. "Commander," Ramirez said, his voice thick with emotion, "we did it." Stark allowed herself a rare moment of relief. She looked at the crew around her. Every person aboard this ship had fought for this moment, had poured every ounce of their being into ensuring humanity's survival. "We did," Stark said softly, her voice steady. "But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will never be the same again." Across the galaxy, the news of the Council's defeat spread like wildfire. Systems once under the Council's iron grip rejoiced, their shackles broken. And while humanity had delivered the final blow, the battle had revealed something far greater: that in the face of tyranny, no force, no matter how powerful, could withstand the will of a united people. The Council had underestimated humanity's resolve. But now, the galaxy had learned the true meaning of fear, and that fear would haunt them for generations to come. The reign of the Galactic Council was over, and the galaxy had witnessed a new power rise, one that would forever change the course of history. Humanity had proven they were no longer just survivors. They were conquerors. The future of the galaxy was now in their hands.